Okay, what age should you start throwing a curveball? All right, this is a big important topic here. So, when is it safe? Number one, research has shown that the fastball is the most stressful pitch. I mean, you throw it the hardest, you finish it the hardest. There's a lot of, I guess, probably biomechanical reasons, but also just like the overall stress and energy that you put through your arm with a fastball is higher than all the other pitches. So, the curveball is, through research, proven to be less stressful on your arm than the fastball. So, common, takeaway from this could be, well, okay, well, we can throw all the curveballs we want, right? If they're, if my 12-year-old is throwing fastballs, which are more stressful, why can't you throw curveballs? Okay, fair question. But let's hold our horses and let's think of A, there's some more research, and B, some of the common sense and I hate to say anecdotal, but experience based pitcher development ideas regarding the curveball. So, number one, yes, research has shown that the curveball is less stressful than the fastball. However, they've also found that through large, like longitudinal studies, that pitchers who throw more breaking balls, whether it's a curveball or slider, report more arm pain than their counterparts who do not. So, sure, the curveball is a less stressful pitch, but if you throw more of them as a kid, your arm's going to hurt more. That's sort of the trade-off that we have, and so it's not really conclusive. And the researchers say, we know this, we also know this, so we kind of still just recommend that you wait and don't throw that many breaking balls when you're young. Okay, so there's other advice that people say, well, what if the kid shouldn't throw a curveball until he can shave? And I think that often comes from surgeons and some other people who they see these injuries, they see what happens when a kid is skeletally immature. They have the open growth plates, and they say it puts extra stress on a growing body. We should wait until they can shave. Post sort of late into puberty, when they're more skeletally mature and their body's physically stronger and more developed, they have more muscle mass. And I think to them that makes sense, but it doesn't match the demands of the sport. It's just too late because, look, we understand we want to be as safe as possible, and I'm completely on that boat. I've had 2 arm surgeries myself. But at the same time, I'm not going to give you impractical advice that's not real world applicable. I mean, in reality, if every kid waited to throw a curveball or slider until he could shave, like that's probably 17, 18 for a lot of kids. How are you going to go play college baseball that way? I mean, you can explain to a college coach, oh, I'm not throwing a curveball until I can shave. And he's going to be like, okay, well, I can't recruit a kid that doesn't have a breaking pitch. Like, unless you have like the world's nastiest changeup, which you easily could develop if you took all that time, which is one of the things I advocate. However, that's just probably not realistic, and it's important to have a breaking ball. So we can't just wait until then because it'll be too late developmentally, and that's really just not the best way to go. So we got to find a balance. And so the age that I start teaching it is at 14 and a half, and I'll explain 14 and a half. This is 8th graders, 14U baseball, right? They're playing their summer of 14U baseball right before they enter freshman year in high school. So that summer, before they hit the fall where they become a freshman, I teach them the breaking ball in the summer, and we start to play catch with it. We start to mix it into our pregame routine. So I explain everything that I do in this course, and we start to play catch, and we start to throw it in pregame, and they're instructed every time we play catch, every time we practice, every time we have a game, you go through your throwing routine, you go through your if you're in a long toss or stretched out today or whatever, you throw change-ups, you throw some curveballs. We mix them all in because now's the time to practice it. And the more they start to get a feel, then towards the end of the season, the last maybe 3 weeks of the season, they can start to mix it in. But all the way up until then, in my academy, what I teach, we're going fastball command and changeup command. You need to get those two. If you learn to rely on those 2 pitches, we'll be in great shape. So then at 14 and a half, we teach it. They have free reign to throw it a lot in lower speeds in practice, and then they can start throwing in bullpens. Then we start to throw it at the end of the season. So they've like, okay, I've gotten a taste of it. And then in the off season, as we're approaching their freshman year in high school, we're working on it in the winter. Okay, so we could wait and teach them in the winter, but it's, I think, a little bit better and completely safe to teach it in that summer where they're going to throw those last 3 weeks. I was the pitching coach for this 14U team where we did this, and they're throwing 8, 10 curveballs in a game. They go 7, 5, 6, 7 innings and 80 pitches or so. So clearly I think the research would corroborate a kid throws 10 curveballs in a game that he goes 6 innings. He's not going to hurt his arm doing that, right? Those 70 fastballs are all more stressful. So I think that makes sense, and let's go over a little more of those things. So again, the thing is, it takes a while. You're not going to just magically snap into this hammer curveball. I teach it at 14, 15 because I know it's going to take 1 to 3 years for it to be a good pitch. Some kids get it really quick, and they have a pretty decent curveball after maybe 2, 3 months. And then for others, it's going to take a whole year before it's like pretty okay. And then after that, it's still a honing over time as they throw harder, as they can spin the ball faster. I can throw a curveball personally because I've been doing it my entire life. I can throw a curveball at 55, 50 miles per hour that kids will miss when they're playing catch. And so then the question is, well, why can't a kid who throws 60, 65 throw the same 50 mile per hour curveball as sharp as I can throw a 50 mile per hour curveball? Well, it's because they don't have the strength and the speed in their arm to spin the ball even at slow speeds that hard. Because again, spin rate and spin axis matter a ton in how sharp a curveball breaks. So as you get older, the spin rate continues to increase, the spin axis continues to perfect, and then the pitch gets better and better. So when you start throwing it at 8th or 9th grade, your curveball is going to be an average 8th or 9th grade curveball. Really, it'll be above average because of the stuff that I'm teaching you in this. But then your goal is to have an average high school curveball. Then it's an above average high school. Then it's a fantastic high school curveball. That fantastic high school curveball is maybe an average college curveball. And then you want to have, it just continues to climb the quality of the pitch. So it takes a while, and we have to continue to move forward with it. So the plan is this: 14 and a half, learn it, throw it in pregame, practice, in the bullpen, 10% at the end of the season. Age 15, 15% or so in games. I do not want kids to rely on this at that age because they still need to learn fastball command and changeup command. Those are the number 1 and 2 things. And they still do have open growth plates. They're going to have potentially open growth plates till they're 18, but they're going to be still developing smaller bodies, 120 to 140 pounds as typical freshmen. Their body just, it's not the best thing to be throwing 30, 40, 50% curveballs, which you'll see a lot. It's really sad. And then at 16 and beyond, which is sophomore year and beyond, no restrictions really. I think they're okay to go full usage, which is 15 to 30%. But if they have 3 pitches, which they absolutely should, because if they've been taught well, hopefully it's been fastball and changeup command all the way up to this point, they'll still throw their changeup a good amount of the time, and they'll still throw their fastball the vast majority of the time. So if they're throwing 60% fastballs and 15% changeups, that only leaves 25% curveballs left, right? So that sort of helps take care of itself, whereas when kids don't have a changeup, they might go 50-50, and that's terrible. It's not good to throw 50 curveballs in a game if they go 7 innings. So we need to teach them fastball command. We need to teach them changeup command. And when I say no restrictions, again, it's still up to like maybe 30%. Now, maybe a kid just doesn't have a great changeup, and he does work hard on it. And his changeup's just not that good, but his curveball's really good. I understand he might throw 25, 30% of them, and that's okay. 80 pitch game, that's like 24 curveballs. That's still relying on the fastball the majority of the time, but it just gets really hairy, and it's just not good for pitchability and all these other developmental things when you start to throw above 25, 30% curveballs. So young pitchers over rely on it because when you're a young hitter, you're terrible. Even if you're a good hitter, you're kind of terrible. Young hitters, just their brains, the physics, all this stuff, it's just really hard. Anything that's slower, they get on their front foot because their hitting mechanics aren't that good. Anything that breaks, their brain just doesn't understand it yet. I've seen this as a 14U baseball coach when curveballs become like they haven't seen curveballs that often. They just don't know what to do. And so any curveball of any quality is pretty effective because it's just different, right? Doesn't even have to be a good one, just has to be different a lot of times. So kids can fall in love with it because it's effective, and coaches fall in love with it because it's effective. I watch junior high baseball games, and the pitch calling is embarrassing. Coaches are calling 14 curveballs in an 18 pitch inning. It's terrible. Because they're afraid that if they throw a fastball, kid's going to hit it. Look, we got to teach kids the right way to play the game. We want them to develop fastball and changeup command first, and then when they do that, and then you give them a curveball, it's a weapon, and they just destroy everybody because they can throw strikes, they can get ahead, they can move to one side of the plate. Now they can pick pitches. Which one's better? I can throw a changeup here, I can throw a curveball. like hitters just don't know what's going to happen. And when you learn to pitch with a fastball and changeup and command both sides of the plate and know that getting ahead and throwing quality, well located strikes is number one, then when you add a curveball on top of that, that's when you become dominant. And that's what you want. You don't want to rely on the curveball and then have to backtrack and try to find fastball command, all that stuff later on, okay? So that's an overview of age and when I believe it's the right time to teach it. There's definitely going to be some fluctuations depending on developmental age, because just because you're 14 doesn't mean you're the same as some other 14-year-old. We've had 14-year-olds who were 6'4" and look like grown men, and really they're more like 16-year-olds. And then we've had 16-year-olds who are really more like 14-year-olds developmentally. It goes both ways. But in general, that age is probably the right time to teach it.